Hi, this is Dana, and on this channel I speak about spiritual warfare. I have another channel on our astrology Facebook page on which I wrote prophetic writings for years, and you find that in the description box below. If you find my work in any other place, uh, please let me know. There are copycats, doppelgangers, and all sorts of individuals who are stealing my intellectual property and my identity. If you are contacted by any of them, please don't answer. I'm not contacting anyone, so it's not me for sure. Just ignore whatever they are saying to you, and ideally, you don't engage with them. In this video, God has guided me to talk about a topic which is a permanent topic of research for me. So it's one of those topics which actually I have been researching throughout my entire spiritual work, even before I started the conscious spiritual fighting, namely researching, analyzing, and understanding, God says remembering, the dynamic of forces. Because I have this gift of seeing forces, seeing darkness, seeing forces in general, not only darkness, I also see the light forces. Then I always, like if I see an individual, then I would see what forces work through him, something like this. So this is part of the research I have been doing always, namely trying to understand which force it is, where it comes from, how that force took over that individual, what is the relationship between the individual and the force, how the force takes power, how you cut the force off, stuff like this basically. This I have been doing since always, namely that God was showing these things to me. So I would always ask, why is this so? How come this individual is related to this force and another individual to another force? What's the relationship between the forces, between the individuals, and so on? This was something that obviously, since I was seeing it and I was shown all of this, I was initially just curious because I was not much aware of the the more of the ugly confrontations between them until later on. So God has asked me to talk about this. The reason why I'm telling you all of this now is so you will understand that this is a work in progress. So I'm not reporting about a topic which is completely researched. I found all the information and I draw a conclusion. This is something, and this is also why I didn't really speak about this so far, because it's a work in progress. I keep finding more information, trying to find more rationales and causal relations behind each of the things that I see. Of course, I do this in order to empower my spiritual fighting, but I also do it as a self-defense, and because I have a very deep conviction that, and I always had this, that there is no way that you have a being from the divine realm giving you something or showing you something with no purpose. I deeply don't believe this. I never believed it. And I always try to understand, if God is showing me something, what is the purpose? What God wants me to do with that information? What should I do with it? So even gifts, I don't believe in anything being just a reward. Actually, even I believe deeply that also the rewards God is giving to you are given to you in order to do something with them. Okay, so of course, for this purpose, I always ask, why am I given this? Why should I do with it? What is your plan? Okay, now always God says, okay, sometimes you think what is your plan, what you want to do with it. But that is the background information, so you will understand that since God guided me to talk about forces at this point in time, it doesn't mean I'm going to report a very comprehensive list of information. But merely what God showed me that He wants me to do is namely to draw attention to people who didn't clean their energy and their karma and didn't do their healing and bondage breaking and so on. Hence, they don't really have a very strong dialogue with the divine. To just shed light for them on this issue, and namely, there are forces which okay, let's start from a different point. Everyone who incarnates in a pure form. You come from the divine realm in a pure form. As I said, everybody came from the divine realm. The soul always stays with God in the divine realm. To be very clear, everybody. Now, of course, it's a matter where you left your spirit. Ideally, you integrate the spirit with the soul and you ascend to God as a oneness. Now, if you don't do your work, your spirit won't be integrated. And then the situation will be much more complicated. However, your soul will always be with God. So when you incarnate from the divine realm. Even if you pick up your spirit from other dimensions, yeah? So you incarnate in pure form, yeah? But as you arrive on 3D, essentially what happens is there are a number of forces. I don't know to give you a number, but there are many forces present on Earth or in outer cosmos watching over the Earth, yeah? So these forces take power over individual, basically. I will try to sum it up because I don't have enough memory on the card. So these forces take power over individuals. Their goal is to feed on individuals. Yeah. Now, basically, depending on what you do and also depending on what happens to you, up to a certain age, especially when you're a small child, it also depends what happens to you, because you're maybe at an age when you're too little to make your own decisions, not because you wouldn't be capable of making choices, because many times if you look, you will see that small children have better instincts and will choose better than grown-ups, and the same goes for animals, simply because they're more pure, and if they have to make a choice, they hear God what choice to make. But as an individual incarnated, you have constraints, social constraints. You have a lot of individuals around you, family, school, society, which aims at mind programming you. And from this point forward, of course, as you grow up, you start making your own choices. Now, there are two ways in which, and some of this information I discovered just now this morning. So, depending on what gifts you have, keep this in mind. Depending on what gifts you have and you incarnate with from the divine realm, there will be a certain number of forces that will hunt you and will try to push you to make the wrong decisions so they can take power over you. I'll give an example. Greed for money. If you make it, it's legitimate to want money, but if you are greedy, you give power to those forces over you. And it's not like it's a takeover instantly. It's a gradual process of taking power over you. They will push you first to do something wrong, first of all, to be greedy. Then they will push you to be unfair to others because you're greedy, and to compromise the safety and the safety of others, your integrity, to lie, to steal, and this is an ongoing process. And the more you accept compromise on your integrity, the more power that force takes over you. Okay? Now, when everybody does enough energy cleanup and healing and so on and so forth, I believe that I'm not sure if this is a gift that only I have or people can reach this level as well. But I can see the force which is behind the individual. In specific moments and interactions, I can see the force which is controlling that individual. Yeah, this is why I'm researching, to understand, because I see the force, but I don't remember all the information about that particular force. They are all different. Not all forces are, most individuals have different forces controlling them. And as I see the image, I try to research to understand more information about why is that force taking control over that individual and how. Because I imagine we need all this information so we can break free and to win this war. This is simple, yeah? I hope everybody understands why. And basically what I discovered is there are two different situations in which forces take power over individuals. One is it takes power over individuals through the wounds created on that individual. So, depending on what type of wounds were created on you, a certain power, a certain force came to take control over you. Now, it depends. That force cannot take control instantly. It depends what you do. You can heal yourself. You can reject the nudges of that force and so on. Or you can accept it and become, for example, if you are hurt, to become hateful on others. If you don't have money, to become hateful on others who have money. This is your fault. You should, to preserve your purity, you shouldn't hate others because they have. You should just aim to understand how you can also get your own money. You shouldn't steal from them. You just focus on yourself and understand how to get money. Yeah. Now, because everybody has the chance to get their own. God gave everybody gifts to achieve this. Now, if you choose to steal from others, then that's your problem, and you empower these forces to take power over you, specific forces. Yeah. So this is one way. So when you were wounded, so because this is one topic which I keep asking, how and when these forces take power over individuals. What are the key moments? Because I told God, there are people who are 50, 70, 80 years old. Now, how the fuck you heal an entire lifetime? So I need to understand, I asked God, I need to understand what are the key moments when these forces took power. So we can actually focus on those key moments and heal them. Then we heal the rest, but we have to have some sort of logic in this mess. So for this question, the answer is that these forces took power over you. First of all, when you were wounded, this is when they get close to your energy field. Because every type of wound, energetically speaking, generates a certain type of energy. And these forces feed on that energy. This is a very simple answer. Yeah? So those forces feed on that type of energy. So it's like sharks in the ocean. If they feel blood, they come to you. It's exactly the same thing with this topic. If you were wounded for a specific reason, you emanate a certain type of energy. Hence, the forces which feed on that come close to you. Many times, the individuals who hurt you in a specific way were already controlled by that force and were pushing them to harm others so they can feed on others, so anyhow. Anyhow, the answer is, this is why I'm so adamant about this, because I just discovered it this morning. Because it's exactly when the wound happened. And these are the sort of forces which took power, or they started haunting you from a very early age. This is why these forces are very difficult to cast off, because they've been with you for a long time if you didn't heal. If you didn't heal and you didn't adjust, you didn't keep a close connection to God and so on, then this type of forces stayed with you for a very long time. Because these wounds were at least this is what I studied this morning. These are the wounds from childhood, from early age, yeah? So they have been with you for a long time, and presumably, if you didn't heal, they evolved and they took more and more and more power over you, yeah? Because I've been studying this all along, and I have seen different type of situations in which they take control. And of course, this is every time when you when you accept temptations and you do things which are not of light. And to be honest, all of us know exactly when we make a wrong choice. Even when you're angry and you cuss somebody, you know that you did the wrong thing. Not necessarily harmful to others, but you know that once you do this, there's certain type of darkness which is closer to you. So everything we do, we actually know on subconscious level or higher self that that's a good or bad thing to do. This is why most individuals are hiding. This is why these convents are secret societies, are not open out in the open, because they know everything they do it's not good. And actually they do work with these forces. They don't fear them, and they don't reject them, they don't heal, they don't. Anyhow, my question was, because we are at such an advanced phase, my question to God was, okay, but when did it start? Take me back to the beginning so I will understand how this individual became possessed by this type of force, how this happened. And so and I discovered this situation that where these forces took power over individuals at an early age, and they never stopped on their path to clean that darkness off, to heal, to pay karma, to get close to God, and to discover their gifts, and to work with their own gifts, make better choices, right? Do right by the people that they wronged, and so on and so forth. This is a pretty easy answer. Now, there's a large number of people, of forces that take control over. I mean, I think some of them, everybody, even without energy awareness, everybody can understand some of these forces, even if you don't see them. And they can probably, at this point in time, they can also feel the presence of those forces in their energy field. For example, all addictions are created this way because you insisted on making bad choices continuously, the same bad choice repeatedly, many times, although you knew it was a bad choice. So you kept doing that. So this is how addictions come, right? So, or because somebody did some black magic work on you, they sent a spirit, and instead of you rejecting it, you keep on the same path with that spirit attachment, which I believe that most honest adult people are aware of. You know if you have an addiction, and you know when you started to indulge in that thing, and you know that you, at least once you had the thought, I should stop doing this, right? So I think, leaving hypocrisy aside, even if you don't have energy awareness, you still are aware of some of this information. Now I'm researching the topic in order to have more of a coherent strategic approach, and to understand how this can be fought more consequently, so we can actually advance in this process. Basically, this is what there is to it. There are forces which take power over you at a later age, because they're associated with different types of addictions, different types of poor choices, which basically go back to faults of character, with bad choices, with God has a wording that he uses with but I don't remember it right now. When you make poor choices, God has a specific expression that he uses. But the fact of the matter is, what you need to understand is that we all came in pure form, and getting rid of all these forces is the return to purity. And this is basically the beginning and the end. Now you need to make up the strategy from the beginning to the end. Yeah, how you do that. So we all came in pure form. There are forces which took power. There are different forces on different people. Even if you indulge in the same type of addiction, keep this in mind. I mean, for example, individuals who have an obsession and they took all this sexuality to madness, in doing all sorts of rituals, accepting all sorts of aberrant things, even getting to the extent that individuals, in spite of obvious biology, they would say that they are different type of embodiment and different type of, they're women, they're not men, they're and so on, transgenders and all sorts of things, which let me say this very clearly. I don't deny the struggle that person has, the transgender or all these individuals. What I'm saying is that that this is not of God. These are some dark forces which took power over that individual one way or another, for one reason or another. Those forces could be sent on purpose by someone, or you just pick them up through the environment where you lived. And you just need to understand that this is not you. That's all. This is and this is not something to dismiss easily. These are forces, and unfortunately, if they got this far, it means that there are forces which have a strong grip on you. It could be that it's a bondage from your lineage that you're breaking, and it's a very deep type of wounding from previous generations that you're breaking. So this is why the fight is more difficult. But what I'm saying, that this is not you. And I want to be very clear, and nobody will convince me to say things which are not true, just to appease some sort of mind programming individuals. This is not you. Everybody came here in purity, and you need to get back to purity. Now, you need to understand what type of forces. Some of these forces, you must understand that I have been speaking in previous videos about embodiments. And the fact that while you are here in 3D, aside from the wounds which actually are inflicted by others on you, you at a certain point, you start doing embodiments. God is activating embodiments on you. And you must start breaking bondage. That means every time when an embodiment is done on you, is activated on you by God, automatically you, as I explained, the DNA of that identity overlaps with your DNA. You take over faults of character and addictions and so on, and wounding from that identity. Even if you didn't go through the events which generated those wounds and that addiction and so on. So for these individuals who actually all of a sudden imagine they are transgenders, I would recommend that you go back and you do spiritual work to understand, because this is also an option whereby a certain embodiment was done on you because you're supposed to break a bondage, and instead of breaking the bondage, you embrace the bondage and you become a victim of this kind of manipulation, so again, I'm not dismissing anyone's struggle. And I deeply believe that individuals who reach this point have a huge type of spiritual fighting to carry on. And that only means that if God gave you that embodiment or allowed for this, it just means that you have special gifts and God knows that you can handle it. Okay? So... but what I'm saying is that I'm giving a heads up. Don't go that path. Don't embrace the embodiment or the wounding which was created on you, or whatever is that bondage. Just understand that it's been given to you to fight it. Okay. Now, I delved into this topic only because I know it triggers people, so I wanted to be clear on it. I didn't mean to enter into this discussion, actually. But what I meant to say is that there are a certain number of individuals. Now, there are individuals who are being controlled and possessed by numerous forces, not just one, depending on whatever choices they made. Now, it is their job to start casting out these forces and to start cleaning house. It is their job to do that. But the purpose of this video is to show that these forces take control over you throughout your lifetime, depending on how your lifetime evolved, what kind of temptations were sent your way, what kind of setups, what kind of traps were sent your way, what kind of choices you made at those times, but also some of them are sort of inherited, let's say, from different, from your lineage, from different embodiments which were activated on you in order to break them, not to embrace them. Because I always hear this, many people keep saying, oh, this is inheritance, you know, so this inheritance, all my family has this, or everybody does this in my family. That doesn't mean you have to do it as well. That means you should break it. Yeah, that's not an argument in order to keep going on the wrong path. Now, there, aside from all of these that you get from your embodiments and from your spiritual fighting, which you are supposed to carry on, there are also those who have been attached to you for a very, very long time. Now there is, and this video, it's over because it's 25 minutes already, but I will probably speak in another video. There is also a dynamic between forces, between dark forces. So let's say, for example, you're an individual who is being controlled by 5 forces, 5 different forces. Yeah, there's always a type of dynamic between those forces, whereby some of the forces, they bring each other, you know. So if you indulge in one addiction, it triggers and brings others, and so on and so forth. That's a more complicated part of the topic, but I will end this video now. The message was basically this, namely, there are specific type of forces. You just need to study it, focus on it. This is why you need isolation. Unfortunately, some people refuse, because all of these forces will, I'll give you an example, something that I have seen always. If I meet an individual and he has a dark force controlling him or possessing him, that force will feed from your energy. If you are depleted of energy, that force will use your body and will feed on everybody that you meet from you. This is why you have such sudden anger at somebody who didn't do anything wrong to legitimate that anger. This is why, because that force is pushing you, so that force can feed from the other one that you're meeting. Everyone that you're meeting, depending on how strong of a grip that force has on you, it will push you to do more and more outrageous things to feed on everyone that you meet, you know. And then you wonder yourself and you say, oh, I have an addiction. It's not an addiction. It's a force within you which is hungry and needs to feed on others. And then you start doing the same thing to everybody that you meet, not because of you, because of the force. But if you don't fight the force, then you are owned by the force and will do whatever it wants with you. Yeah. Again, there are forces in that individual which feeds on everybody. This is why isolation is important when you do spiritual fighting and healing, because that force, you will be in a room yourself with that force, and the force will have nowhere to feed from, and then sooner or later you become aware of that force. And then it's when you start the healing and the spiritual fighting against it. This is how it works. It is very easy. It's not so complicated. It's just that you people are refusing to do the right thing. If you stay in isolation, this is why God says always in spiritual fighting, stay there. Don't leave. Stay there. Withstand the darkness. Because as long, and this is why God has shown to me at some point, stop cleaning your energy, stop pushing darkness, learn to withstand the darkness, stay face to face with the darkness and understand what darkness is being sent to you, who is sending it, and learn how to fight it off. Because otherwise darkness will gonna chase you all your life everywhere you go. You keep cleaning your energy, people keep sending this to you. You keep cleaning your energy, people keep sending this to you, and you don't get anywhere by doing this. This is not why you came here. Your instinct in a human incarnation, and I'm talking about me now, my instinct was to push the darkness away. But God said, you didn't come for this. You came here to fight it. So stay put, see what kind of darkness it is, learn how to fight it off. Yeah? So isolation is critical. This is why I said that God himself told me that there are individuals who must be in prison or in some sort of forced isolation, simply because these people allowed these forces to take so much power over them that they will not stay in isolation and do their work. Instead of that, they will destroy everybody around them. Simply they can't. God actually tested individuals that are gang stalking me. And God, in my spiritual fighting, guided me all the time to alternate between fighting and between giving opportunities for them to fight the forces. And he drew a line and conclusion. He said, they cannot help themselves. And at that point in time, God shared with me this, namely that there are individuals who are way too far into this, and they literally cannot put up the fight. And for this reason, they must be isolated by force. So the darkness cannot feed on others. As long as it feeds on others, will stay attached to that individual. And God is showing to me that many people were triggered by my previous statement where I said that God said that some individual must be in prison. No, but it's true. It's true. There are specific type of advantages, and please remember, for example, in Romania, there were individuals, spiritual individuals, that were imprisoned during communist time because of their religious belief, their spirituality, and they became saints because of the way they dealt with that circumstance. For those that are guilty, or for certain individuals, I don't know for whom, God decides for whom, prison is the only chance for them to survive and cast out darkness. And let me emphasize one more thing before I close up. This is a phase where this must take place, and this is for a very important reason, which I have actually mentioned in previous videos, namely that it's not beneficial to anyone if individuals die. Death is very detrimental. Why? There's an individual who did a lot of harm, let's say, and is basically possessed by many dark forces. This is a progress. It's a progress, I'm not kidding. Namely that there is a number of steps in the metamorphosis of that force which were achieved through that individual's existence. It really doesn't matter if he did only harm, but even by doing harm to others, that individual provided a vessel for that force to achieve a certain number of steps of metamorphosis. You understand? So we need to take advantage of that and continue that fight even in spite of the will of that individual. This is where prison becomes an advantage, because it doesn't really matter, and this is about, let's say, a criminal, serial criminal, yeah? Well, that individual gave power to a force which reached a certain level of metamorphosis. If that person dies, that force will transit to another individual and the process starts all over from the beginning. The problem is when it starts all over is that it's very difficult to detect it. You first have to wait years and years for an individual to provide vessel to that force and to do harm on others, so you can actually start punishing, so you can actually start spiritual fighting and so on. So if you're an individual of 40, 50, 60 years old, and you have done a lot of murders and crime and harm on others, for the community, for the spiritual community, it's much more advantageous to put you in prison and help you do the spiritual fighting, because let's say that force, dark force which possesses the individual, has to take 12 steps in metamorphosis in order to be casted out. Maybe that force already took 9 or 10 steps out of 12 through that individual. So it's at the culmination phase. Now, you only need to take 2 more steps to cast out that dark force from the 3D. So it's better, more beneficial to put that individual in prison and somebody to do the spiritual fighting in order to roll back that force completely. And this is, God is telling to me, this information is for the people in judicial systems. So they will understand what kind of provisions they make when they make punishments with prison and so on, and to whom. But if instead of that, you decide to let that individual free, or even worse, to kill that individual, then again, that force will transit into somebody else. If you let that individual free, the force will do body jumping into other individuals. You understand? This is, again, very detrimental. You destroy other people, and you give food to that force to feed on others and to start doing harm on others from the very beginning, to start the process from the very beginning again. And the more people that force feeds on, the more powerful it gets. Yeah. So this is why there's a certain particular time. First of all, death is not beneficial. Death is not beneficial. Because I explained why. Because we are here to do spiritual fighting, to roll back forces. Every individual that you fight is controlled by some forces, and you do to some degree, rollback of a certain force. Yeah. It's not beneficial that anyone dies just because you start everything from scratch. You lose very valuable time, because the metamorphosis of forces has a certain process, and nobody can influence that. Even in my own spiritual fighting, I will tell you, sometimes I ask God, when am I able to leave or get out of the house or do this or do that? And God says, you are fighting this force. You must get to this week or this month or this day or this is the time when that force will be casted out, will be rolled back completely. If you get out of the house before, that force will feed on your energy and you extend the time. You know, do you understand what I mean? This is really important in spiritual fighting, to understand that isolation is important, because even if you're not empowering forces, for me, for example, God has guided me for a very long time of isolation, simply because individuals in my neighborhood were empowering dark forces, which feeding on me would gain more power. And God showed me, if you are out and about, that force is feeding on you, because they are just watching you to get out. And that means it will get more power. Now we already got so far weakening that force. You know, I need you to work with me, be patient, and just allow for the process of metamorphosis, because we're so close to rolling it back and casting it out. This is very important. So it is extremely important that you keep dialogue with the divine realm and receive guidance in all of this, because most clearly, I didn't know all of this when I started the conscious spiritual fighting. And I didn't understand this, and I made a huge mistake in 2018 June, surprise attack, when I left the house. And God kept insisting, don't go, don't leave, stay in, don't go out, they will feed more on you. And I didn't understand then any of this, of course. I learned myself through my own spiritual fighting. Of course, I'm not advising anyone to make any kind of choices. It's your responsibility to make the choices. But I'm just providing you information that will inform your decisions, hopefully. So this is about the prison, and this is about the rolling forces. This is because God showed me just now to talk about it, to mention it, because it triggered some people. This is the logic for which God says that prison is important for certain individuals, because they must be isolated. Now, if they refuse to isolate, and most probably many of them will refuse to isolate, because if that force has strong grip on them and they don't have power to fight it off, they will get out. This is why you isolate individuals who are addicted to drugs, for the same purpose. It's the same argument. Yeah, it's the same argument. Okay, I'm gonna also, God is showing to me that prison for certain individuals which carry attachments from certain type of forces is more beneficial than hospitalization. God shows to me, because in order for them to survive, the prison provides enough darkness as opposed to hospital. So the type of addiction and the forces they must fight are I don't know how to say, are a certain type of orientation. I don't know how to say. Basically, this is what God is showing me, that certain individuals which must be in prison because they need to be in the darkness in order to survive the process of rolling back. And this goes back to previous videos in which I explained this, how you need sometimes to stay surrounded by darkness so you actually stay alive in certain type of attacks. Okay, so God is showing to me this now. The prison is extremely important for certain type of individuals who fight certain type of forces, because in a normal environment they cannot. In a hospital they cannot roll back that force, probably because of the energy they feed on, I imagine. Now it's 40 minutes and I will stop here because it's going to be hard to upload. God is showing to me that this is information for everybody, but mostly the end of this video, the information God provided to me is particularly for those people in judicial system, in justice system, and law enforcement who are part of making justice in 3D, so they will understand the role they play, and the role their decisions play in this spiritual fighting. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop here really.